Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome members, guests and speakers to this April meeting of the Central and East Planning Committee. Before we start the meeting today, however, you will all be aware of the sad announcement on Friday of the passing of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. And I'm sure all our thoughts are with Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family at this sad time. But I would like to ask you all to remember His Royal Highness as we begin our meeting by observing 1 minute silence as a mark of respect. So if we will all remain on mute, and I will indicate when the minute has passed. Thank you. Thank you everyone for that. Now, before we actually get into the agenda of the meeting this morning, I do have a few housekeeping rules. Most regular attendees will be familiar with these housekeeping rules, but for new people and anybody watching us on YouTube, we are going out live on YouTube this morning. We'll be on the County Council's website for people to have the opportunity to view this meeting. So please be aware that anything you put in the chat function will be able to be seen and read by all. Please leave your microphones on mute unless you intend to speak. If you do intend to speak, if you could possibly type RTS please in the chat function and indicate, and if I don't spot that, I'm sure one of the officers will alert me. If, however, your computer doesn't have the facility to do that, then if you raise your hand, we will be aware, but we'd rather you did the RTS function. So thank you everybody for those ground rules, and we will record the meeting, and I'll indicate when recording is finished at the end. So now we'll move over to the agenda, and the agenda this morning starts with apologies for absence. I will do some introductions actually, which was a bit remiss of me. So if we do some introductions, and then you'll understand who it is who's speaking to the meeting this morning. So if I think about where we would have been in the council chamber, and I start from my right hand side, we would have Martin. So Martin, can you introduce yourself please?
Good morning, thank you Chair. It's Martin Tyndall, Committee Services Officer.
Right, thank you. And Ian, if you could introduce yourself now, please.
Yes, good morning. Ian Croft, Senior Committee Services Officer.
And then next to me, I would have our legal representative.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Claire Cuskin, Legal Advisor to the Committee.
Thank you, Claire. And then on my left, I would have our Senior Planner.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Sarah Eldridge, the Area Team Leader.
And then normally we would have whichever planning officer is going to give the presentation. So we'll make that planning officer after we've done these few initial formalities. Thank you. So number one on the agenda, apologies for absence. Could we have those, please, Martin?
Sorry, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillors Cochrane, Corrigan, Freeman, Lang and Taylor.
Thank you. Sorry, Ian. And do we have any substitute members?
No, Chair, we have no substitute members.
No substitute members this morning. Thanks for that, Ian. So item 3 on the agenda, we have the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 9th of March. And these are pages 3 to 26 in the pack. I would take it that all committee members who were present at that meeting have had a chance to have a look through those minutes. So would anybody who was present at that meeting, does anybody have any amendments or anything they want to raise? No. So would any member who was present declare those a true record?
Move it as a true record, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor David Brown. And could we have a seconder for that, please?
Chair, happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bev Coult. So now we'll move on to item 4. Does anybody on the committee have any declarations of interest in the item that we're going to be discussing later?
Chairman, sorry to put in on a point of order. Councillor Cole wasn't present at that meeting, so she can't second those minutes. No, I wasn't either.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shuttleworth. I did make a point of saying there, and yes, you're quite right. I should have checked the attendance. So could we have a seconder who was actually in attendance at the meeting, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Iveson. Yes, I see you were present at the meeting. So now we'll move on to declarations of interest, and I didn't see anybody declare a declaration of interest earlier on. So we can move on to item 5. However, if anybody does realise they do have an interest as we go through the application, feel free to jump in. So item 5 on our planning committee agenda this morning is number 15, the Avenue in Coxo, and this is a proposal for a new residential property, and this planning application has been dealt with our planning officer Jennifer Jennings. So Jennifer, if I can move over to you to give the presentation, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just upload the application now, the presentation. As you said, it's for a new single residential dwelling in the rear garden area of 15 the Avenue in Coxo. I don't know whether anyone can see that. Is that coming through?
I can see you, Jennifer. Can anybody else nod if they can see? Yeah, I'm getting some nods there.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the site location plan, it looks quite small on my screen. I'm hoping you can all get a good visual of it. It shows the application site outlined in red. It's located quite central within the settlement. So it's essentially a lawned garden space located off the back lane, which separates the back lane separates the terrace properties and their yard areas from the main garden areas to the rear. So from looking at the aerial photo, the general layout of development in the wider area shows dwellings providing frontage along the main roads, and these tend to have large linear garden plots to the rear. However, looking closely at the application site and the neighbouring garden plots there, you can see the extent of built development directly adjacent to the back lane. So it appears quite built up at this point, but the rear of these sites does form a clear area of garden land, and I'll have photos to demonstrate this in just a little bit. So the front of the property, number 15, can be seen here. It's an end terrace, and it's adjacent to the entrance lane that leads to the back lane to the rear. The application site is just visible at the end of this entrance lane. It consists of the brown shed, which is to the left of the silver car in the photo, and then the site extends further left from the shed and obviously back from there. So this is a photo of the rear garden area, which is where the proposed dwelling is to be sited with an attached garage. The first floor windows, if you can just make those out at the back of the picture, are of number 78 Pedersendale, and they're just visible above the hedge line. So this is a further view of the garden land, and the property that you can just see there is number 69 Pedersendale, and that's just, you can just see its upper windows above the hedgerow. Standing with my back to the garden space, you can see the rear of number 15 and number 14, the avenue, and the offshoot extensions there. So these two photos are a side-by-side images, and they show the view along Back Lane when standing by the application site. So the extent and variation of buildings and structures is quite clear from this photo, and does show the area appearing to be quite built up at this point. And then this is the view looking along the back lane from the opposite end, so standing adjacent to number 1, the avenue. This photo here is taken from Pedersendale, and it shows the front of number 69 to the left of the photo, and you can just make out number 15, the avenue, just in the middle of the photo in the background, and then number 78 Pedersendale is located to the right of the photo behind the tree there. The proposed site plan, which is to the left of the slide, shows the frontage of the site is dominated by a hard-standing parking area along with the double garage. The dwelling would be set back 12 metres from the lane. The full building would equate to 144 square metres footprint out of a site area of 386 square metres. The floor plans, I'm hoping you can make those out on the slide, they indicated 3-bed dwelling with 2 in the upper floor space along with a study and bathroom area, and then the roof plan, the right-hand corner of the slide, shows the 5 roof lights. The rear and front elevations are shown along the top 3 drawings, with the side elevations along the bottom of this particular slide. So in terms of heights, the front elevation of the dwelling would be a maximum height of 5.3 metres to ridge when viewed from the back lane. And then the rear elevation would be 6 metres to ridge when viewed from the rear garden due to the land level differences. The eaves height would measure 3 metres in total. So again, I can't see this very clearly in my own computer. I'm hoping you can at least make out the site in context. So it shows the dwelling surrounding the property. Numbers 78 and 79 Pedersendale are just to the north of the site, and then northeast of it is 69 Pedersendale, and then the avenue is at the bottom of the slide to the south of the site. So we've had a number of consultee responses. Coxo Parish Council have objected and they've raised concerns over highway safety. They also comment that they would not wish to see the land to the rear of the dwellings developed for housing development, and they consider that the scheme would be an overdevelopment of the site. Highways Authority have raised no objections to proposals, and then Contaminated Land Section are satisfied with the Phase 1 report submitted, but they do require a condition for further reports. 3 letters of objection were received, including one from the local ward member. The main issues highlighted are concerns over parking and access to the junction with the avenue. Concerns are also raised that the proposed would set a precedent. We received further comments that there is no requirement to squeeze in another house when other larger areas of land already have development or permission for housing. Other issues were raised over impacts on privacy and loss of light, particularly given the level differences in the land. A proposed dwelling in this location is considered to be out of character and with the surrounding garden land and would impact on wildlife. So the various planning considerations are outlined below. I'm just going to briefly summarise these, but the committee report does provide full detail of our assessment on this. So as outlined in the report, the proposals represent a sustainable form of development. They're well located within the village and compatible with surrounding residential uses in accordance with parts of Policy 6 of the County Durham Plan. However, in terms of impact on the character and appearance of the area, there are some noted conflicts with Policy 6D, as the proposed dwelling would undoubtedly be larger than surrounding buildings contained within the garden area. The proposal would also see development pushed further north into the site. So Whilst there is this conflict, we consider these impacts would be quite localised, but within the wider context, and certainly set against the two-storey terraces, the proposals would not appear excessively intrusive. Detailed assessment within the committee report has discussed what the impacts would be on residential amenities. I'll just show you this slide again, showing that suitable distance standards can be achieved between properties in direct line of sight of the proposed dwelling. So that's the ones along the north here, Pettis and Dale, and the avenue to the south. But number 69 is shown as being 13.4 metres distant from the proposed dwelling. But because it's located offset and diagonally across and at an oblique angle, the issues of direct overlooking are not considered problematic in this case, and I've discussed that in length within the report. Although there was concern raised about the impacts of the upstairs accommodation, from looking at the details, that the proposed upper floor roof lights are set quite high in the roof. So they measure 1.8 metres from the floor level to the bottom of the window, meaning that they provide limited opportunity for outlook and are intended more for providing natural light into the roof space. In terms of height, it's considered that the proposed dwelling is of a suitable height, and we don't think that it would have an overbearing impact on the nearest residents or result in loss of light. In terms of highways, sufficient parking is available on site for both the new property and the existing property at number 15. A condition would be attached requiring parking to be retained in perpetuity for number 15. So overall, there's been no concerns raised over highway safety, particularly at the junction with the avenue. So to conclude, whilst there are some conflicts with Policy 6 of the County Durham Plan, within the wider planning balance, the proposals are considered acceptable due to provision of a dwelling in a highly sustainable location that has ready and safe highways access and would not be detrimental to surrounding residential amenity. The proposals are therefore presented to members with a recommendation for approval, subject to conditions as outlined at the end of the committee report. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that report. We do have some registered speakers this morning, and we'll hear from the registered speakers and may well come back to you for any further comment. So the first of our registered speakers this morning is Claire Llewellyn. And Claire, I understand that you're speaking on behalf of Councillor Parish Council, and you are in fact their clerk. So good morning, Claire. I'll take it over to you now for your representations. Thank you.
Good morning, thank you. I'm here to give an objection on behalf of Councillor Parish Council, an objection to this application. The Parish Council has concerns in relation to traffic and highway safety. This can be a fairly busy part of the village, especially with the post office nearby on the front street. And parish councillors believe the property would overlook other properties. They don't want to see development at the back of houses in this area, and they believe this would be overdevelopment in this area of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. We do have another registered speaker, one of the local ward members, Councillor Stuart Dunn. So Councillor Dunn, if you'd like to give your representation now, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Could I just start by explaining that I've not declared an interest in this application, although I am a member of Coxo Parish Council. The reason for that is that whilst I was present at their consideration of this application, I didn't take part in that consideration, and I didn't predetermine my ability to comment at planning committee. So therefore, I'm speaking on this now. If I can, I'll take you through some of the paragraphs of the report which is in front of you, looking first of all at paragraph 5. I welcome the amendments made by the applicant to the rear windows to roof lights instead of windows in the rear of the property to restrict overlooking. That is appreciated. However, the provision of 2 off-street parking spaces for 15 the Avenue sounds very reasonable. But in my view, there'll be no sustainable ability to enforce that these spaces will be available for 15 the avenue in perpetuity, especially if the existing and new properties end up in different ownerships. Looking now at paragraph 8 of the report, this application and the precedent it will set for the back street for further additional backland development is not sustainable for this residential environment, or the additional parking that it will generate on the back street and the avenue itself. Nothing has changed on the ground from the conditions in 2005 that led to that previous application being rejected. And in my view, this is still contrary to NPPF Part 2. Moving now to paragraph 38D of the report. The location of this proposed property is totally inconsistent with the setting and could potentially lead to inappropriate infill development all along this back street and overdevelopment of the area and transport infrastructure. And therefore, in my view, it would also be inconsistent with County Durham Plan Policy 29. Although there are other properties in the back street, they are sheds, they are garages. You saw on the photographs how narrow the back street is. All of these properties have bins, they all need services, they all need access. At the bottom of this terrace, you might have seen 5 very nice, neat rectangles. They were 5 townhouses which recently were built out from an extant planning application. Already, the parking from these, which was considered to have acceptable and reasonable parking for that planning application, already those are overspilling onto the avenue. This is being investigated by DCC Highways and Durham Police because it's causing an obstruction, immediately between those properties and 15 there is a bus stop on the avenue. On the opposite side of the road, as the clerk of the parish council mentioned, there's a post office and a local shop which all gets parked up on the other side. It's a very, very busy area of the avenue. As was also said, there's a significant height difference between this property and the neighbouring properties below on Pedersendale that make this development inappropriate in my view. Looking at paragraph E, there's no capacity for additional visitor parking for these properties. And I believe that with the incremental effect of this on top of the effects of the townhouses and the precedence it sets for parking capacity of the area will lead to a breach of County Durham Plan 21 on parking. Looking at paragraph 57, I do not agree with the officer's assessment that there'll be no unacceptable impact on the area by approving this application, and it's therefore in conflict with County Durham Plan Policy 30. In the circumstances, I therefore request that members consider the rejection of this application. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. I will go back now to Jennifer. If there's anything that you would like to add, you may want to bring our highways expert in. So Jennifer, if you have any comments to make on those representations. You're on mute at the moment, Jennifer. Are you having a bit of an issue getting your computer off mute? I wonder if we can go over to John McGarrigle. John, is there anything you'd like to add on the highways comments while Jennifer's attempting to unmute our computer?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, quite happy to comment on highways. 2 issues were raised with regards to highways. The parish council raised the issue of concern about highway safety, and Councillor Dunn's raised an issue about parking. First of all, I'd like to point out to the committee that at the current development site, there is space for 4 vehicles to park. There's a garage, an existing garage, which is double sized wooden garage where you could park 2 vehicles. There's a hard stand area adjacent to the garage where you could park up to 4 vehicles. So you could park up to 6 vehicles presently at this development site. The new development will accommodate 2 parking spaces for number 15 the avenue, together with 2 parking spaces in a double garage and 2 parking spaces on a forecourt to the garage. So on balance, there's no increase in demand for parking for the new development. No increase in demand for parking would mean that there will be no increase in vehicular movements. The existing potential vehicular movements will be replaced with the new vehicular movements. When we look at these sort of developments, it's worth pointing out to members that we do a risk assessment. We consider what the risk would be and if it would be contrary to policy in terms of road safety and NPPF. The risk looks at the likelihood of an event taking place and what the outcome of that would be. Well, the likelihood of a collision taking place in this area where there hasn't been one previously is extremely low. The outcome should a low speed collision take place would be minor. So it's got to be said that the risk to road safety is negligible. So we don't really have any concerns with regards to road safety, and we don't have any concerns with regards to any increase in parking demand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. I'm not sure whether there are any other points that, Jennifer, you wanted to come in with, or were you purely, or you've managed to unmute, right? Just in the nick of time. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll bring you in now.
Thank you. Sorry, there's a bit of a lag problem with the computer. My computer's working slowly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yes, in terms of the previous refusal, obviously, and this was discussed in the committee report, it's obviously a decision from 16 years ago based on the old local plan. I mean, the refusal reasons were assessed, as part of this particular application, and it was not felt that against the current NPPF that it was sustainable to maintain that refusal. So the whole application was assessed afresh, and we considered that based on the presumption in favour of sustainable development, that it was enough to swing the balance towards an approval in this particular case. We've also carefully assessed the height differences in terms of the land and the impacts of the bungalow in this particular location, and felt that it was very unlikely to have any negative visual intrusive impact on the residents at Pettersondale. And in terms of the plot, I mean, I understand that obviously it is a narrow lane, and if every plot was to be converted, I could understand that there would be implications. However, this particular plot, because of its specific location and its size, it's quite wide. It's a lot wider than most of the other plots to the rear, and it's also beside that lane, so it does have much easier access out onto the main adopted highway. So in this particular case, the merits of the case meant that it appeared acceptable from our perspective for erection of a dwelling on site. And then we did put a condition on the approval, or should it be approved, relating to parking to be retained for number 15 in perpetuity. So I feel that does deal with that. If the property was to be sold, it would be, if number 15 was to be sold, the condition associated with the new dwelling would have to be adhered to, and any change that would require a planning application, and it's not likely that we would accept removal of parking places for that particular dwelling. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for those additional explanations. We do have another registered speaker this morning, and so now I'll go over to Mr. Paul Baxter, who is the agent for this particular application. So, Mr. Baxter, if you would like to start your presentation now, you do have a total of 5 minutes, and one of the officers will indicate if you come up close to that time limit. So over to you, Mr. Baxter.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning to the committee.
I'd just like to thank the committee for this opportunity to speak. My name is Paul Baxter. I'm speaking on behalf of the client, Mr. Ryder, who lives in Coxo and has done most of his life. I won't talk too long, as the officer's report clearly covers all the issues. However, I thought it would be worth covering some of the concerns that have been raised and to let the committee members know how Mr. Ryder has looked to overcome the issues raised by his neighbours. Neighbours are rightly concerned by the loss of light, privacy and overshadowing to their properties. This is why Mr. Ryder was keen to amend the proposed plans on several occasions to ensure that his neighbours would not be adversely compromised. The bungalow has been reduced in size significantly and windows have been removed to ensure that there be no overlooking, loss of privacy or overshadowing on neighbouring properties. The Parish Council and Local Council are concerned about traffic and highway issues. However, it is noticed that the Council's own highway officer, as we have heard from, are satisfied with the proposals, access and parking, and therefore we would urge the committee members to take the highways comments into consideration. The officer has addressed one of Councillor Dunn's concerns about retention of parking for number 15, and that would be dealt with as a condition and can be included on the deeds of the property. The issue of precedent has been raised. Mr. Ryder is wanting to bungalow for himself so he can move into more accessible property as he grows older, so he can remain in the village that he loves. Mr. Ryder will certainly not be applying for any more development in the area. If any further proposals are to be submitted, then the committee can look at these further down the line. We would like to ask the committee to assess this proposal on its own merits and not what may or may not come in the future. Finally, it is also important to Mr. Ryder that this bungalow, if allowed, is a sustainable development with low carbon solutions to help reduce the impact of the environment. If the committee are minded to grant permission, Mr. Ryder will be intending on building this bungalow from sustainable materials and will be investing in energy saving solutions such as solar panels and air source heat pumping systems. In conclusion, I would like once again to thank the committee for their time and allowing me to speak. I would ask members carefully consider the issues involved, but ultimately look to the officer's recommendation for approval, and it's respectfully requested that permission be granted for this bungalow. I'm available to answer any questions, Chair, if this is felt appropriate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. So, committee, over to you now. And as I've indicated earlier, if you could use the RTS function, if that's absolutely impossible, then raise your hand. So we do have somebody indicating to speak already. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just looking at can we just put that slide of the Lydia layout of where that's going there while we're on there? Can we please?
You mean the
plan where that shows the street?
Sorry, you want the site plan, is it? Or
yes, please.
Yes, please. I'll just get it for you now, just a moment.
Can we move that on the site plan, can we?
Yeah, I think Jennifer said earlier on, Councillor Shuttleworth, there's a slight delay, isn't there?
Right. Yeah, well, if you look at that site plan, it does set a precedent because everybody in that street will be wanting to do that. And you know, the reason it was obviously turned down in 2005 was clearly because of that and nothing else. Because if you allow it there, everybody along there can say, well, we want that. And I think it detracts from the whole appearance of that. If it was in the middle of a field, I mean, I don't think it's a problem. But there, you'll have everybody in the dwelling saying, well, if this guy can do it, somebody else can do it. And it does set a precedent, and I think it detracts from the appearance of the rear of that street. But that's my own personal view, and maybe Councillor Blake will have something to say because it's her ward as well, you know.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. Do any other councillors on the committee, would they like to speak? Councillor Coult.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Bev, Court, Eschen, Whittinghill Ward. Just similar to Councillor Shuttleworth, Chair, for me it sets a precedent not only for the street where this resident lives, but other streets in the village. Because when you look at the map, there's a lot of them that have got a similar style of garden, and I do have concerns that if we sanction this, that it is going to set a precedent. I accept what the officer is saying, that this area of land is slightly bigger, but I still think there is a strong potential that we will get inundated with applications for buildings to go on there. And another concern I've got, Chair, if I may, is if this is approved, obviously it's a very tight lane at the back, and I accept that there is a cut leading up to it, but with regards to getting big HGV vehicles in there to get deliveries of any goods, I think it's going to have a significant impact on the residents. These things take periods of time to build. So yeah, I do have concerns with regards to this, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coult. Would anybody else on the committee like to offer any discussion? Would any of the officers like to comment on any of the comments that have been raised so far? No. Would any of the committee, right, we've got, I'm being inundated here a little bit. Claire Cuskin, our legal representative, you would like to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up the issue of precedent, if I could, please. That's been raised by a couple of members. We wouldn't normally take precedent as a material planning consideration unless we thought that that had additional impacts, such as it was going to lead to an unacceptable impact upon the character and appearance of the area, or lead to unacceptable residential amenity standards. So precedent alone wouldn't be a material planning consideration that I would recommend the committee using as a basis for a reason for refusal.
Right, thank you for that clarification, Claire. It's very useful. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Davidson, you've indicated you'd like to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just trying to hit the right button there. I think we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I think that with well, we could call it with foresight, I think we can all see that what the situation is and how it'll get worse. That other people will be able to do the same thing and maybe buy 2 gardens and stick a house in it or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because it's had the permission to start it off. But I'm struggling because I can't really see. This is my usual position on this committee, isn't it? I can't really see a way where we can refuse this, because there's a lot of worries on highways grounds. But then we've got John McGargle saying that all we're going to do is we're going to displace the current vehicles that are parked there with new vehicles. So there's not actually going to be any more highways movements to and from the back street. So we can't really, unless we say that we fundamentally disagree with John McGargle and come up with something where it's going to be a problem with highways, then I'm sort of struggling to see how we can turn down the application, Chair. So I'll reserve a decision for now, but give everybody else a couple of minutes. But if anybody can come up with a solution how we can turn down the application, I think that would be something that well, I would certainly be happy with, but I can't come up with one. So give everybody another couple of minutes to try and come up with something that would be acceptable, and if not, then I'll come back on and move approval, please, Chair.
Right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Shuttleworth, you wanted to come back in. Is it on a different point?
It is, Chair. I think just in relation to the detail that's regarding the 2005 application, I think it might be prudent just to defer this to another meeting, because it doesn't sit right with me, this, and I think deferral might be the best way forward till we see sight of the 2005 report.
I'm not sure that I agree with you, actually, Councillor Shuttleworth. It was already been mentioned by the planning officer that there have been changes in legislation since then. But Jennifer, if you perhaps, or Sarah or Claire would like to come in and expand on that, I'd be grateful, just to explain a little bit more to Councillor Shuttleworth.
Hi, yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the decision was made in 2005, and the details of that particular refusal were, I'm just trying to get the details of that here, related to highway issues which we feel don't stand in the current circumstance. Sufficient parking is available, and we also feel there's no concern over access. Reference was made within the refusal for that it was based on backland development, but we feel that because it has safe and ready access to the site with sufficient parking and doesn't require, often when it comes to backland development, it would usually be where you would have to travel past a house within the garden area, but there is separate access to the site, so it would be difficult to argue on that basis, and we do feel that it's sufficiently meets residential amenity standards. At the time of the refusal was also an outline application, and it only related to the layout on site and the means of access. So there was no details on the actual appearance of the dwelling. And one of the refusal reasons suggested that the dwelling would improvise or impact negatively on the design of the dwelling to try and fit it within the site and to meet residential standards. But obviously the current application indicates that a house can be located on site, it's of a suitable height and it wouldn't have an overbearing impact and create loss of light, and also is capable of meeting privacy standards in that regard. And then I think the only other concern was the issue of loss of privacy, but I do feel that the current proposal has met those requirements. So I think, I mean, the decision from 2005 is available to view and has been, and we addressed it within the report. So I do consider that, you know, we've taken a fresh assessment based on the current planning framework, and on that basis do consider that the application is can be supported. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So in your view, there are sufficient differences between the previous one and this one. And Claire, I know you're waiting to come in as well. So Claire Cuskin, if you'd like to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up the point in relation to the 2005 refusal. We've got an application before us which we're required by law to determine in accordance with the development plan as it stands and any material planning considerations. Now, the 2005 application was determined under a completely different planning regime, so we've now got the County Durham plan in place, we've got the MPPF in place, and officers have, well, planning officers have assessed the current application before committee in accordance with the most up-to-date version of the development plan and any other material considerations. So I am struggling a little bit to get to the position where I can advise members that the 2005 decision is in any way relevant to the determination of this application.
Thank you for that explanation, Claire, and I do think that that covers that point sufficiently. Do we have any other members of the committee who would like to speak, or indeed raise a motion in connection with the decision? Councillor Davidson, you've come back.
Thanks, Chair. I think that that everybody's expecting what I'm going to say here. We've got a property that's looking to be built between other properties and in the back street of a different of another property, but we don't seem to have any details about a construction management plan in our conditions. So why haven't we got one? And I think that always in places like this, then we do need something about the working hours, and that I always like to be less working hours than the the sort of the councils ones, can't remember what you call them now, you know what I mean, like the ones that they start off with, which starts at 7:30 in the morning, and if you've got that in the back lane of your house and you're 12 point whatever meters away on a diagonal, you know what I mean. So Jennifer, is there something we can do on that, and why haven't we got one, please?
I'll take that point up, Jennifer. So I guess what you're saying there, Councillor Davidson, is that you would like to see a construction management plan put in as a condition and amended so that the construction times are later than in the normal county council plan. Is that what?
I think they start at 7:30, something like that, and when it's in a sort of back street in a built-up area, then it's probably better for 8 o'clock, and then people have got more chance to actually be able to sleep. So I'm just wondering if we can consider that, Jennifer.
I do think that's a very relevant point, and it brings in Councillor Cole's point earlier on that she raised about and also Councillor Dunn's point about this being a very busy area of the village. So Jennifer, can we have your comments on that, please?
Yes, that's not a problem. I think that's perfectly reasonable to put a condition on to any permission granted, looking for details of a construction management plan and to restrict the hours. We can work that through environmental health for their views on the acceptability of that as well. So if members are minded to approve, then we would certainly add a condition along those lines.
I think that would almost be a prerequisite, really, Jennifer, but thank you for that. So back to you, Councillor Davidson.
Thanks for that, Chair. With that, I'd like to suggest that we accept the officer's recommendation, please. I don't think that this is going to be a perfect scheme for the residents. I don't think it's going to be. I think Councillor Dunn might be here trying to get us to object to another one in this back street later on in the next couple of years, but I don't think that we've actually found anywhere where we can refuse the application. So I'd like to go with the officer's recommendation, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Do we have a seconder for this motion, which has been amended for approval with the introduction of a construction management plan? Councillor Bevcold.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Chair, I'll second Councillor Davidson's proposal. To be honest, I think we can't find a way to reject this application, and I do have the concerns still that I raised, but because I can't find a way around it, I don't think we've actually got a choice, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Colt, and I'm sure it's been mentioned several times that any future applications will be considered as robustly as we've considered these, and the committee always does an excellent job in considering those things. We don't have any other motions on the table. This particular application's been approved by Councillor Davidson and seconded by Councillor Colt. So Claire, if I can go over to you now to go through the vote with the committee, please. If you can just explain for the benefit of viewers how this will take place.
Certainly, thank you, Chair. Yes, so what I'll do is I will take a vote in alphabetical order of members present. The vote is in relation to the proposal by Councillor Davidson, which has been seconded by Councillor Colt, to approve the application subject to an additional condition regarding the hours of working on the construction management. If any members, if I miss any members, please do let me know. I'll start with Councillor D. Brown. Are you for or against the proposal, please?
And for the proposal. Support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Colt?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Davidson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Iverson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Manchester?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Shuttleworth?
Against.
Thank you. Chair, unless you wish to vote, that's 6-1 in favour of the proposal.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, so that application has been approved as per the officer recommendation with the addition of the construction management plan. And so we agree as a committee to approve that application. Thank you, everybody, for that very good discussion this morning. We now move over to item 6 on the agenda. And as usual, that such of the businesses, in the opinion of the chair, is sufficient urgency to warrant consideration. Well, I don't actually have any items for the agenda this morning, but there is something that I would like to make a reference and a comment to. We do have a planning officer in attendance this morning, Mr. Alan Dobie, and Mr. Dobie is due to retire at the end of this month. I may get into trouble for doing this at this committee meeting, but I do feel it warrants all of our thanks to Mr. Dobie for the years and years of service that Alan has given to the county council. He's in district council prior to that, and I'm sure he'll be a big miss within the planning team. So I'm sure that the committee will join me in wishing Alan a very happy retirement at the end of the month, and very well deserved. I don't know exactly how many years it is, Alan, but I do know that I've gone to you for information from applications way back. So thank you very much. And I say you've put your best wishes in the chat column in your usual understated way. Thank you very much, Alan. And just another little aside, this will actually be my last planning committee unless we have an emergency one before the election. It's been a pleasure to work alongside the councillors that I've been on this committee with. I've been on this committee for the last 8 years of my county council role, and I will miss, and you know, I have enjoyed the meetings and the very good representations that I've had from the members on the committee in my time. So thank you very much, everybody. That is this meeting closed. However, we do need to stay until we're indicated by the IT that the recording is finished. So thank you, everyone.